All right, let's jump right into this explainer of John Gray's insanely popular and heavily debated 1992 relationship classic, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. Look, whether you've actually read it cover to cover, or you've just heard the title thrown around in pop culture, there is no denying this book left a massive footprint on how we talk about gender and communication. So today, we're going to break down the exact psychological framework Gray proposes. We'll objectively look at why these ideas have resonated so deeply with millions of people, and of course, why they've sparked so much intense debate along the way. To map out this interpersonal journey, we're going to cover 6 key areas. We'll start with the planetary divide, move into core emotional needs, see how we get lost in translation, and then learn how to navigate what Gray calls caves and waves. Finally, we'll wrap up with his tools for connection before unpacking the book's complex legacy and modern critiques. Okay, Section 1, the planetary divide. Let's get right to the core metaphor that literally drives this entire book. The big takeaway from Gray's framework is that relationship friction isn't usually about a lack of love. It's actually a fundamental lack of translation. He argues that men and women operate as if they hail from entirely different planets. And the problem is, we constantly project our own planetary rules onto an alien species, so to speak. When those expectations fall flat, like when your partner just doesn't react the way you would, you feel unloved or disrespected. But in reality, according to this text, you're just speaking completely different emotional languages. Section 2, core emotional needs. Let's see how this planetary divide actually translates into the specific emotional requirements Gray assigns to each gender. This quote really anchors the whole theory. It establishes the baseline emotional fuel that each partner supposedly needs to thrive. Gray posits that a man fundamentally needs to feel like his efforts have tangible, practical value. He needs to feel needed. On the flip side, a woman thrives when she feels cherished and loved unconditionally for who she is emotionally, not just for what she does. Now, what's super interesting when you break these core needs down is how drastically they differ. It really shows that offering exactly what you personally want might completely miss the mark for your partner. Think about the men's side for a second. Trust, acceptance, admiration. Those are very autonomy-focused, right? Now contrast that with the women's needs: caring, understanding, devotion. Those are highly connection-focused. Gray points out that we constantly misapply the golden rule. We give the love we want to receive. So a woman might offer a man deep, probing understanding when he really just wants basic acceptance. Or a man might give a woman plenty of space and trust when she's actually desperately seeking emotional reassurance. Which brings us perfectly to Section 3, lost in translation. When those distinct needs aren't met, we enter the conflict zone. We have all seen this classic play out. A woman comes home super stressed and just starts venting. She wants to be heard. She's seeking that emotional connection. But the man, he hears a problem, and his brain immediately goes into overdrive offering solutions. And what happens? The woman feels totally dismissed because her feelings are being minimized, while the man feels entirely unappreciated because his very practical fixes are being rejected. It is literally a perfect storm of miscommunication. And it doesn't stop there. Gray asserts that misunderstandings also happen because we literally keep score differently. For instance, a man might plan this huge, expensive weekend getaway and think, great, I'm covered for the month. He thinks grand gestures score massive points. But according to Gray, a woman's scoring system values consistency. Every act of love, big or small, scores exactly 1 point. So while he's coasting on that vacation, she's feeling neglected because the daily drip of small validations, like just making coffee or listening to her day, has completely dried up. Section 4, navigating caves and waves. So, how do we handle this? Gray introduces a couple of really vivid metaphors to explain how each gender processes stress. First up is the cave, or the rubber band theory for men. Gray argues that when a man pulls away during stressful times, it is not a personal rejection. It's actually a necessary retreat for him to process his thoughts and reconnect with his independence. It's like a rubber band. He stretches away to solve problems internally, but once that need for space is let, the tension naturally brings him snapping right back, totally ready for intimacy again. So the actionable advice here for women is basically don't chase him into the cave. Allow him that space rather than forcing a conversation. By recognizing this retreat as a psychological necessity rather than a failure of the relationship, you can totally avoid building up resentment or taking his silence personally. Now, on the flip side, Gray describes a woman's self-esteem as a wave. It naturally rises and falls and requires a completely different kind of support. When she's feeling good, she's riding the crest of the wave. But inevitably, that wave crashes. It's this natural dip where she might suddenly feel overwhelmed, insecure, or just in need of really deep emotional connection. And for the guys out there, the text explicitly advises active listening during these crashes. Practice empathy instead of playing the role of the dismissive problem solver. It's all about just being present in the emotional storm and making her feel heard. And honestly, according to Gray, feeling heard is exactly what helps that wave crest once again. Section 5. Tools for connection. All right, let's get into the actual practical diplomacy tools the book provides to bridge this planetary gap. I find this first one really fascinating. It's called the love letter technique. It gives you a highly structured framework to fully process your negative emotions before a confrontation even starts. You deliberately write out your feelings, working through the layers, anger, sadness, fear, regret, until you finally reach that bottom layer, which is love. It's basically a tool designed to stop us from just dumping raw, unfiltered anger onto our partners. It turns what could be an explosive argument into a much more balanced expression of vulnerability. Then there's the art of asking. Gray notes that women, specifically, might struggle with asking for help because they fear rejection or want to appear self-sufficient. These steps guarantee clearer, blame-free communication. But pay attention to step 2 here. Use would you instead of could you. Gray argues that asking a man, could you empty the dishwasher, sounds like you are literally questioning his ability to do it. But would you empty the dishwasher is a direct request for his assistance. It's a really subtle phrasing shift, but it's meant to completely bypass male defensiveness. Finally, Section 6, Legacy and Modern Critiques. We have to talk about the lasting, yet highly debated, cultural footprint of Gray's work. 3.58. That is the book's average rating out of 5, across over 100,000 reviews on platforms like Amazon and Goodreads. Think about that. For a book that's sold tens of millions of copies worldwide, sitting right there in the middle, perfectly encapsulates how incredibly polarizing this framework has become over the years. You can really see the divide when you weigh the praise against the criticisms. Millions of people have genuinely used Gray's practical advice to foster tolerance and save their relationships. Supporters absolutely love the communication toolkits. But modern critics, they argue it relies way too heavily on rigid, unscientific gender binaries. Detractors are quick to point out that humans are vastly more complex than these strict Mars and Venus categories allow, and they seriously question whether these behaviors are innate biology or just outdated societal conditioning. But despite all the debate, this quote really summarizes Gray's ultimate goal. It's about utilizing empathy and patience to navigate our inevitable differences. At its very heart, the text is just a massive appeal to stop expecting our partners to be exact clones of ourselves and to start taking the time to learn their unique emotional languages. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want you to reflect on your own experiences. Does viewing your partner as an alien from another planet limit your understanding of them? Or does it practically save you from daily exhausting misunderstandings? Does boxing them into these categories hold you back? Or does this framework provide the exact grace and patience you need to communicate better? Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I will see you in the next explainer.